Hey everyone, welcome to Studio Review. It's Kyle, and today we're going to be reviewing creating an abstract entity. In this studio, our goals are to review connecting MySQL to Timely, creating that connection between our database and our website, and then passing the data between that website using an abstract class with our mappings. So to start this out, we're going to be opening up that past project coding events and creating a new branch. All right, to get started, we need to change our repository to that add persistent category branch. So in IntelliJ, I'm going to click on the bottom right, then find the add persistent category branch, press checkout. The next thing it says is to create a new branch. In order to do that, we click that bottom right again, we click new branch, and then it says to call it abstract entity studio, and then create. Great, let's move on to our tasks. So now let's turn our focus on event and event category. We need to reduce duplicated code. We need to find variables and methods that these two have in common and combine them. So let's take a look at that. In both event and event category class, we have ID, getID, equals, hashcode, and name. So let's take a look at these similarities. In our sources, we're going to go to main, Java, go to our models, we need to open up event and event category. We see that event and event category share ID, getID, equals, and hashcode. So from reviewing the code, we definitely know that these are shared. However, the variable name is not similar enough to claim it shared. So why do we say that name is not actually shared? Because though private string name is the same in both event and event category, we see that the annotations don't match. We see that not blank exists on event on string name, but it doesn't exist on the string name and event category. Therefore, these two variables are not the same and can't be shared. So now that we've identified these, we can reduce the duplicated code by creating that abstract class that we're going to call abstract entity. And as you know, this is called a superclass. It's one that other classes are going to extend from to utilize what's inside. Let's go ahead and create that superclass called abstract entity. We'll do that under models. We'll right click, new Java class called abstract entity, add it to our Git. And our first instruction is to make it an abstract class. To do so, we need to put the keyword abstract in front of class. Next, now that we've created the superclass, we need classes to extend it. Those two classes are going to be event and event category. So let's do that now. Go into event and type extends and place abstract entity there. Next, we'll extend event category by placing that same keyword extends and then abstract entity. Great. Now let's put something into abstract entity for them to extend. So let's go into event and copy ID and paste it. We see that the annotations ID and generated value are automatically imported for us on paste. Next, we'll copy getID from the event class. Then finally, we will copy the hashcode and equals. Perfect. Event and event category now extend these four variables and methods. Now that we've pasted all of our methods and variables here that are shared, let's go to event and event category and remove the duplicate code. We're going to remove ID and those three methods, getID, equals, and hashcode from event and event category. Great. Event and event category are now extending abstract entity. So now we see we're getting an error here. It says ID has private access in org.launchcode.codingevents.models.abstractEntity. So what does this mean? The event variable is created here on line 20 of the class type event, but we are not in the event class. We are in the abstract entity class. And we know that not only event utilizes abstract entity, but also event category and maybe more classes in the future. Therefore, we can't limit this equals method to only the event class. We have to make it more dynamic. In order to do that, we're going to change event here to abstract entity. So once we do that, our error goes away. We no longer have that access issue because we're accessing ID through the abstract entity variable called event. If this concept is confusing at all, feel free to review scope and inheritance. So now that we have our abstract entity class built, we need to add a very important annotation. At the very top, we need to add mapped superclass. So what mapped superclass annotation does is let our server know that this is an abstract class that will not be mapped, but instead its subclasses will be mapped. For example, event and event category that extend abstract entity. So great, let's go ahead and try to run this now. And we see that it has been started. Let's go ahead and open up a new browser. We go to localhost port 8080 and we see that our application is started. Great, so let's load some information in here to make sure that it's actually working. Before I do that, I'm gonna pull open my SQL Workbench. The coding_events schema is selected with no tables, views, stored procedures, or functions inside of it. So let's go back to the website. We're gonna first create a category and we're gonna call it my test category. And I'm gonna create it and it looks like it's created. We reopen MySQL Workbench, we refresh, and we see that 3 tables have been created: event, event category, and hibernate sequence. If we review event category, we see that my test category has been created with the first ID. This is Hibernate working with us to provide information from our application into our MySQL database. This is a lot easier than running a bunch of queries and populating this data on your own. Going back to the application, we'll create an event now. We'll call it My First Event, provide a description, we'll say it's a type of conference, and we'll create it. And it looks like my first event was created. So let's check this with MySQL. We go to the event table now, and we see that my first event was created. It looks like everything is working properly. I hope you all enjoyed this studio, and it answered some questions of how abstract entities are created and how they're useful to us now and into the future.